Some struggles don't disappear after prayer. You ask for forgiveness. You promise discipline. You delete the apps. You set the boundaries. And for a while, it feels like you've won. Then, without warning, the urge returns. Not loudly. Not violently. Just quietly enough to make you tired. And the exhaustion becomes heavier than the temptation. Because what really wears you down isn't desire, it's disappointment in yourself. You start to wonder if something is broken inside you. If your faith is weaker than everyone else's. If God is slowly losing patience. But here is the part few people explain clearly. The persistence of temptation is not proof of God's distance. It may be evidence that something deeper is being uncovered. The deeper question is, what is this desire trying to soothe? Lust rarely begins as rebellion. It often begins as relief. Relief from stress. Relief from loneliness. Relief from feeling unseen. Relief from pressure. God created desire as a force for bonding, for covenant, for intimacy. But when that desire loses direction, it becomes a shortcut, a quick escape instead of a meaningful connection. And shortcuts always feel powerful. Your brain is wired to remember what gives fast comfort. Over time, temptation becomes less about pleasure and more about regulation. It becomes a coping pattern. That's why sheer willpower doesn't solve it. You can restrain behavior and still feel empty. And emptiness eventually demands attention. The pattern beneath the pattern. Scripture has always pointed to this deeper layer. When Jesus spoke about lust beginning in the heart, he wasn't simply tightening moral rules. He was exposing origin. Behavior grows from belief. Actions grow from unmet needs. Habits grow from repeated relief. And when something keeps returning, it is usually attached to something unhealed. You are not wrestling only with attraction. You may be wrestling with loneliness, or anxiety, or exhaustion, or an old wound that learned to self-soothe quietly. Temptation becomes strongest when the soul is tired. Consider the life of David. He was a warrior, a poet, a leader. He knew God deeply. Yet he drifted in a moment of unguarded desire. What started as a glance became a decision. What became a decision became destruction. But here is what is often overlooked. God did not erase him. He confronted him, yes. But confrontation was not cancellation. When David was exposed, he did not collapse into self-justification. He broke open. And from that brokenness came Psalm 51, not a plea for reputation repair, but a cry for inner reconstruction. Create in me a clean heart. Not just change my actions. Change my core. God used failure to reveal dependency. Success had hidden it. Weakness exposed it. And exposure is painful, but it is also surgical. If God simply erased the impulse without addressing the hunger beneath it, the heart would remain unchanged. And unhealed hunger always finds a substitute. Some people overcome lust only to become controlled by pride, or anger, or obsession with achievement. The surface changes. The emptiness doesn't. God is not only interested in modifying behavior. He is forming maturity. And maturity is slower than we prefer. Temptation operates in both the spirit and the nervous system. Repeated behaviors create neural pathways. The brain begins associating certain images or fantasies with relief. That loop strengthens over time. But here is what neuroscience confirms. Habits are not erased by suppression. They are replaced by stronger attachments. Spiritually, this aligns with transformation through renewal. When shame drives you back into hiding, the cycle deepens. When honesty leads you toward God instead of away from Him, a new pattern begins to form. Pain no longer leads to escape. Pain begins leading to connection. That shift changes everything. One of the most destructive whispers in this battle is, "You are not worthy of closeness with God until this is gone." That thought keeps you fighting alone. But God does not wait for perfection before offering intimacy. He invites you into intimacy so that transformation can occur. If the struggle grieves you, that is not evidence of distance, it is evidence of life. A hardened heart does not ache. The fact that you care means something sacred is still active within you. Instead of only asking, "How do I stop?" begin asking, "What am I feeling right now? What am I avoiding? Where do I feel empty? What do I actually need in this moment?" You may discover that the urge appears after conflict, or isolation, or late-night fatigue, or stress overload. When you name the true need, you weaken the disguise. Over time, desire can be redirected rather than merely resisted. There is a kind of strength that comes from constant victory. But there is a deeper strength that comes from repeated surrender. Each time you return to God honestly instead of hiding, you reinforce humility instead of pride. Humility is not humiliation. Humiliation says, "I am worthless." Humility says, "I need help." And God builds upon humility. The wilderness was never meant to destroy Israel. It revealed what Egypt had planted inside them. In the same way, this struggle may be exposing patterns learned long before you understood intimacy with God. Exposure is not abandonment. It is invitation. This battle may feel like delay, but it may be preparation. It is teaching you how to depend instead of perform, how to seek instead of suppress, how to turn toward God instead of hiding in self-condemnation. One day, you may look back and realize this season shaped your compassion, your wisdom, and your authority over impulses. The urges may not always shout this loudly. The shame may not always feel this heavy. But the reflex you are developing, the reflex to move toward God in weakness, will outlast the struggle itself. You are not beyond healing. You are not uniquely defective. You are not disqualified from closeness. You are in the middle of formation. And formation by nature takes time. Stay in the process. The God who begins deep work does not abandon it halfway.